Welcome back to the morning docket. We're going to step away from the Groves trial for just a moment and take you live to Stamford, Connecticut, where our own Aaron Keller is live outside. It is a snowy morning in Stamford. He is outside the courthouse where we are awaiting the arraignment of Fotis Dulos, his ex-girlfriend Michelle Troconis, and Fotis Dulos' attorney and personal friend Kent Mawhinney, all three arrested on charges related to Jennifer Dulos' murder yesterday. We know this is not the first time around for Fotis and Michelle Troconis, but Aaron, before we get to some of the new evidence that was revealed in the arrest warrants yesterday, sort of paint the picture for us. What's happened so far this morning, and when do we expect the action to get underway?
Well, what's happening right now, of course, is a snow squall here, so bear with me. The wind is quite strong here, so everybody's set up behind me right now. We have press from across the country here waiting for these arraignments of Fotis Dulos, his former girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, and of course that attorney. The attorney's arrest was the real surprise in this case, and many people are wondering if maybe that was the last link police needed before they actually pulled the trigger and made these arrests, because of course Fotis Dulos and the girlfriend have been accused for quite some time on lower charges of tampering with evidence and hindering prosecution. Those charges basically got them into the system and allowed police to track the movement to Fotis Dulos with that ankle bracelet while they built up this murder case that now has been filed. So we're all here waiting for this arraignment to happen. I'm hearing maybe about 11:45, maybe noon, somewhere in that time frame. The defendants were brought into the courthouse through a back entrance. There's a sally port back there for security reasons. So we did not get a look at them, but the attorneys representing Michelle Troconis and Fotis Dulos entered the front door here. This is video I shot maybe about 45 minutes ago, if I'm remembering properly, of Norm Pattis there in the ponytail. He's the primary attorney for Fotis Dulos. He walked in basically just complaining about the weather, along with most of the rest of us who are standing out here in it. He didn't have much to say. Of course, there's a gag order that remains in this case. So that remains forefront in his mind. He's being careful about what he says at this point, even while he fights that gag order in front of the Supreme Court.
So let's talk about some of the new evidence that came out in the arrest warrants yesterday, detailed arrest warrants. And I want to start with Kent Mawhinney, because you mentioned that this was kind of the biggest surprise. Here we have a longtime close friend of Fotis Dulos and also an attorney representing him in a civil case involving Jennifer Dulos' mother. He's arrested for conspiring, conspiracy to murder. And the allegation here is that he somehow had a very large hole dug on the property of the Windsor Rod and Gun Club in East Gransby that apparently witnesses have come forward and said could have most likely only have been for a grave, although there were never any remains found there. What do we make of this?
Oh, certainly. I mean, it doesn't look good. That's what we make of it right now. And this is the information that a lot of people have been waiting for, saying, hey, look, there's something wrong here. We've got a missing mother of 5. Nobody's seen her. Nobody has heard from her. Her husband is, basically saying, well, she may have just disappeared. And of course, a lot of people didn't believe that in the investigative ranks of the state police and the other associations and authorities that were investigating this case. So look, I mean, they're digging into this, and now I'm realizing that's probably bad verbiage to use here. But look, they've been trying to figure out exactly what happened to her. Is something in that hole that you just mentioned, Stacey, what they really need to look at here? Is that the missing piece in this? There are so many unanswered questions in this at this point that it remains to be seen exactly who may crack under the pressure of now suddenly having murder charges filed. Is it going to be the ex-girlfriend, Michelle Troconis? Because she gave one version of this to the authorities initially. We have that so-called alibi script that we learned in the court document that she had written up with Fotis Dulos to try to account for their whereabouts back when Jennifer Dulos disappeared. And then they got a hold of those documents. They confronted her with them. First, she stuck to her story. Then she started to change her story. This is Michelle Troconis that you're looking at right now in a previous court appearance. When she was arraigned on the second set of charges, this new charge is the third set of charges. So look, she's trying to set up a story with Fotis Dulos. They have that in writing. Then she started changing the story. And if she started changing the story, it made it look more and more incriminating. So we also have her saying, hey, look, I was cleaning up the house. I wasn't cleaning up the body. That's one thing she said. She also said that Fotis Dulos had told her at one point that he wanted his wife to disappear. I'm paraphrasing it, but that's basically what he said. And again, very damaging comments that Michelle Troconis made to authorities about Fotis Dulos. Is she going to agree to testify for some kind of a deal? That's another question that all the lawyers have here.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that does not look good. The fact that she's telling investigators that Dulos said, "I sometimes wish my wife would disappear," continues her story. Mentioned she had nothing to do with the body, but the fact is we still don't have a body in this case. There is, though, more and more evidence. We know about Fotis and Michelle Troconis being caught on camera dumping these garbage bags, and now we know about a little bit more about some of the contents. Talk to me about that, because I know there were zip ties found that have DNA, not just of Jennifer Dulos or the zip ties, but there was other evidence in those garbage bags that had the DNA of both Troconis and Fotis Dulos.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is becoming a much stronger case with the new set of documents that have been filed here along with these new charges. So, look, we've got the zip ties. We've got the statements changing, the story changing, allegedly from Michelle Troconis. We have that. We have the attorney who at one point represented Fotis Dulos in a civil suit between his wife's family and himself over money that had changed hands back and forth between the husband and the wife's family. We've got that attorney now arrested here. So authorities have been obviously plugging forward with this investigation. We saw bits and pieces of it. Now we're seeing a lot more of it, but certainly the hope is that much more is going to come, because there are still so many unanswered questions. We've got the zip ties, we've got the DNA, we've got the video that shows Troconis and Dulos, Fotis Dulos that is, driving around right after Jennifer disappeared. And the accusation is that they were disposing of at least some evidence in the case, bloody evidence, possibly more. The question is exactly what was it? Where did they bring it? They brought it to neighborhoods. They threw it out where regular neighborhood trash pickups were happening in Hartford, Connecticut. Well, he lives over in Farmington. That's outside Hartford to the west. And keep in mind, he also lives quite some distance away from where the victim lived. In this case, the victim lived down in New Canaan. That's in the southern part of the state, down on Long Island Sound. She lived a little bit back inland from the actual shoreline, but she was quite a ways away from where Fotis Dulos lived, and he made a trip. It wasn't just next door. So what's he doing going down there, according to Troconis, and then heading back up to Hartford and throwing away evidence? Hartford's more than an hour away from where the victim lived.
Yeah, I'm not sure how any defense attorney can explain away all of those things. There seems to be so much circumstantial evidence. I want to ask you about one other thing that I found interesting in the arrest warrant, and that was the commentary of a medical examiner who I expect eventually we'll hear from at trial, should this go to trial, who said based on the degree of blood loss found on Jennifer Dulos' items and so forth, that he would state that Jennifer Dulos suffered an injury that was non-survivable without medical intervention. A homicide of violence, he called it, that most likely had to do with some kind of traumatic blunt force, bludgeoning, beating, sharp force injuries like stabbing. So we have no body, but a medical examiner saying, look, all this other evidence points to a very violent death.
Exactly. It's horrific evidence when we take it at face value based on the accusations. But look, there were some pieces of that when I looked at it the first time, I thought, well, maybe this is going to be open to attack by the defense when this case moves along. But the core accusation of the degree of blood loss, I think, might be the serious one that authorities are really trying to put this case on. Because, look, if you have a lot of blood loss, but not a body, it's a lot easier to prove that there's a murder rather than a disappearance, which, of course, up until now has been the defense strategy for Fotis Dulos himself.
Aaron, one last question before we let you go to get set up for those arraignments. The defendants all held on bail. Fotis Dulos, $6 million bail. Michelle Troconis and the attorney Kent Mawhinney held on $2 million bail. So we know they all spent the night in jail. I believe Norm Pattis said that Fotis Dulos is expected to post bail today. I know you had some thoughts, though, on them all being held overnight.
Yeah, exactly. If you're the police and you're investigating this case and you have them locked up overnight, we've seen this in other trials, Stacey, you're probably putting them in cells next to one another, and you're leaving that recording equipment on in that jail to see if those defendants actually talk to one another overnight. When suddenly faced with his ex-girlfriend, does Fotis Dulos say something? Does the ex-girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, say something to him? Are they nearby? Who's nearby? I heard through the grapevine here that that she may have been in one facility, but the attorney and Dulos may have been in another. I'm curious to know exactly where they were positioned and whether or not authorities were recording that, because we hear that kind of evidence in many of the cases we cover here at Law and Crime. But given that, and if I were representing them, I would certainly warn them, hey, look, you get arrested, make sure you don't say anything, because it's likely that the police have the recording equipment going. On top of that, though, think about the gravity of what we've got happening right here in this courtroom in Connecticut coming up within the next hour or two. We're going to have a man whose attorney says he's going to be able to post a $6 million bail request in the death of his wife, alleged to be a murder. How many defendants in America can post a $6 million bail? This is a serious case. It's a serious case with many implications. That's why everybody's watching it. And look, we have complaints about bail reform in many states. Here you have somebody who claims they're going to be able to post a $6 million bail. It's astronomical. It's almost unheard of in the criminal justice system.
Are you surprised? Was there any thought in your mind that the judge might say, okay, being held without bail?
You never know. I mean, but the bottom line is that he has complied with most of the restrictions on him in the lesser charges. $6 million is a big amount, though, so we'll wait and see exactly where this is going to go when they get into court here shortly.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much for all that great information. We know it's cold out there as the snow continues to come down, so stay warm and go get a good spot in the courtroom. We will be checking back with you later today as these arraignments get underway. Aaron Keller live for us in Stamford, Connecticut. Thanks, Aaron. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but much more here to come on Law and Crime. Stay with us. We'll be going back live to Ohio as the Groves murder trial continues. Stay with us.